In this video, we'll look at the tools that we use to break up or divide a surface of a polygonal object in order to give you more vertices, more edges, more polygons to control in order to get the shapes more specified beyond just the basic primitive form. So for this example, we'll look at just a simple cylinder, and this is just a really simple 16-sided cylinder created with the cylinder primitive tool. And we'll look at some of the ways that we can divide up these faces. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, and since we're going to be doing a lot of things inside here, I'm going to go down to that double line and break off this menu so that I've got it here to work with. So all of our divisional tools are located in this second section of the Edit Mesh. You can see that it's broken down into these different chunks here. The second section here is where we find all of these subdividing tools. Now the first two have to do with when you actually have curves in your scene. Since we don't have any curves, these won't be as important, and we will skip down to these next 5 tools, which will be the basic ones that you use for most of your subdivision needs on your polygonal models. So first one is the Cut Faces tool. And this tool will take the first point that you click at. So if I click here on the left and drag across, it will take that first point and make it a pivot point, and then it will send a straight line from that pivot point to wherever you move your mouse. And then when I release the mouse, it will create a slice through the selected geometry. Now, there is something that you have to be careful about, and that's the fact that it will do this based on whatever your current perspective is. So if I go from kind of an upsided angle like this, and I'm going to reactivate that tool by pressing the G key, that will reactivate your last tool, always the G key, and I click and drag across here, it looks like I'm just going to make a nice slice through my geometry. But if I rotate around here to the side and the other side, we'll see that in all actuality, I've cut all the way diagonally through the bottom of the polygons. I've created triangles here and here. I've turned these side quad polygons, these 4-sided polygons, into 5-sided polygons, which can be a problem. And just in general, I've made a bit of a mess of things. So if I want to cut diagonally, you have to be really careful what your perspective is. So let's go ahead and undo that. And this Cut Faces tool works best in your orthographic views. So I'm going to press the space bar to bring up my quad view. And let's move our Edit Meshes menu over to the right. And here on this right-handed view, I'm going to press the G key and then click, and let's try a diagonal again and drag across. Now, in this way, I have a lot more control over how this is going to work. I can click and drag that through. You can see it's made that diagonal cut. And if I look in the front view, you'll see that it actually is showing a kind of an ellipse because I'm seeing the cut from the left-hand side of the object here on the top, and then on the bottom I'm seeing the cut through on the right-hand side of the object. So it's created that ellipse from that orthographic view. Now another thing that I can do, let's press the G key to reactivate that tool, is hold the Shift key. And when I do that, it's going to constrain the cuts to 45-degree angles. This can make it a lot easier, obviously, to make a nice straight cut directly through an object. And I can add as many cuts as I want, and I can do that very quickly and know that they're always going to be nice, even, straight lines. However, if you're doing a bunch of maybe unevenly spaced but evenly sliced lines, there's another tool to look at, and that is the Insert Edge Loop tool. We're going to skip over the interactive split tool for just a second and go down to the Insert Edge Loop tool. And all that the Insert Edge Loop tool requires you to do is to click on an edge, and then it will draw an edge all the way around through the perpendicular edges or through the polygonal faces that create the polygon loop that edge is a part of. So I can click and drag and add in an edge here, add in another one here, add in another one here. You can see that pretty quickly I have started to create some more geometry, and I've added in these extra edges, but I only added them exactly where I need them. All right, so let's back up here. And that is going to be an integral part of doing subdivision surface modeling in order to get more rigid surfaces. So when we get to subdivision surface modeling, you'll see that that Insert Edge Loop tool is really crucial to a good workflow. Now let's hop back then to the interactive split tool. This tool actually replaces the split polygon tool that used to exist in Maya. Let me reset this back to its default settings here. And it allows you to make cuts through polygons and do so at uneven edge levels. So, but right now you can see that as I move my mouse around, it's just highlighting either vertices that are already existing or halfway points between vertices. So it has a snapping function that's turned on right now. So right now it's just going to snap to these vertices, which if you are just going to go around the tool is a really, really slow way of doing something that could be done with the Cut Faces tool or with the Insert Edge Loop tool. So in this way, this is a very, very cumbersome tool because it's not really worth what you're doing here. If you do need to make a cut through a couple of polygons only, then this is really good. So let's say I want to just cut through to here. When I've gone through as far as I want to go, press Enter or Return, and it makes that cut. Okay. But where this tool actually becomes more useful is when you need to make cuts that are not even. So let's go ahead and undo that. And I'm going to go again up here to my interactive split tool and hit the option box. And you can see that constrain to edges is turned on, and that means that the tool is always going to stay on an edge. And for the most part, that's going to be a really good thing unless you want to create some kind of extra detail inside the middle of an edge. Where this snapping function comes on is here under snap settings, and you can see that there are snap magnets, and that's how many times a particular edge is divided in order to create the snapping. So if I turn that up to something like 3, it's going to now allow me to snap to quarters instead of just halves. So you can see that's actually a little bit more useful because this is the kind of thing that I couldn't do with just inserting edge loops. Let's just work our way around here. All right, but you know, it leaves a lot to be desired as far as how jagged it is. All right, so let's go ahead and press Enter there, and you can see that it's relatively even because I'm just going at essentially quarters of the geometry. Now, where you can get even more flexibility here, again, let's go back to our option box, is by setting that snap magnet down to 0. So now I have free reign over the particular edges, and I can go to any point on the edge because there are 0 magnets there to snap to. So now I can work my way around, and I'm actually going to stop right before the end here, and then I'm going to do these with my snap magnets turned back on. So let's go ahead and again go to my option box. I'm going to turn my snap magnets back up to 1, and now I'm going to click from this point to that point, and that is where the snaps really come in handy. So when you have something like this, like say I had this n-gon here with evenly coming in edges on that side and on that side, and I just wanted to cut right through those and essentially wanted to attach to vertices that were dividing up the edges on the contiguous polygons. So that really helps out in that way and allows me to just go snap, snap, and I've got a new edge running through that divides up this geometry and now has actually kept nice polygon loops. So if we look here, see I have a polygon loop there, and I have a polygon loop there, and it's kept my geometry nice and clean. So moving on here, 2 more tools that we'll look at in this section are the Offset Edge Loop tool and the Add Divisions tool. Now the Offset Edge Loop tool is very useful, especially again with subdivision surface geometry, but also is good when you need to add in edges to existing geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the Offset Edge Loop tool and click on an edge, and dragging left and right will then bring edges in closer or farther from my existing edge, and we'll add in a new border edge on either side of whatever edge you had existing. All right, now you'll notice again that this is not happening evenly, and there is an option here. If I go up to my, let's go ahead and undo that first, go to my offset edge, go to my option box, and you can see once again I have some options here, and this one has the option for relative distance, which is dividing it based off of percentage, depending on how far away the neighboring edges are, or equal distant from edges. So now if I click that and drag that in, you can see that it has created my edges equally on either side, and it doesn't regard the percentage scale. All right, so let's go ahead and undo that. And then I'm going to get rid of this edge loop here. Now, if you want to remove edges, there's a tendency and a pull to sometimes press something like the delete key, which at first glance will work well. But if I go over my edges and highlight here, you can see that this edge and this edge are actually now two pieces. So just hitting the delete key while it will get rid of the edges is leaving the vertices behind that were attached to those edges. So if you want to remove an edge, which often you want to do as you're creating topology, creating polygonal flow here and adding geometry, you want to delete some of the edges. You want to use the delete edge vertex tool. So that's down here at the bottom. Click on that and it's going to delete the edges and the vertices that are associated with those edges and essentially remove the edge from the equation entirely. So then the last thing we'll look at here is the add divisions tool. And what this is going to do is take your geometry. I'm going to go back to object mode and select this again and close that down. And so if I select this add divisions tool, it is going to take all the polygons in the selected object and break them down. We'll take every four-sided polygon and turn it into four four-sided polygons. But then the nice thing that this also does is you can see on the top here that it has actually created four-sided polygons all along the top. So if I go to edge mode here, you can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 edges now. And so it's created kind of these triangle-shaped four-sided polygons. And so it's actually added some nice geometric work to my shape in order to make it all four-sided polygons. So there you go. That'll get you started on dividing up and conquering your geometry in order to take the basic forms that you create with your polygon primitives and turning them into more specific objects that you need for your 3D models.